listening to the Mountainside Podcast, and my guest for today is my friend Scott Enderich. He is an avid outdoorsman, archer, conservationist, and the current active president at American Bowmen Club. I enjoyed hanging out with Scott today. We came directly from a morning of shooting at the archery range, straight into studio here to record this conversation, and I hope that you enjoy the listen. Scott, it was awesome spending the morning with you, man. What a way to start the day. I mean, right out of the gate.
Getting out
40
shooting.
targets?
Yeah. Spent a couple hours there. About
Didn't ruin too many arrows.
I ruined 3. You ruined 0.
Yeah.
So
we're not chalking it up to that, man. It was more about the hangout, right? Like, I'm not trying to be this professional archer. So I'm going to say that right out of the gate. So as you start sending your hate mail, you know, because I get a ton of hate from that community for some reason.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's such a bad community as far as that side of things goes. Like, come on, let's all just go out there, shoot, have a good time.
You're right.
Get proficient at it. And it doesn't need to be this huge score thing. Like, we kept score, but it was more for our personal benefit than anything.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. And the scoring system, what was the gentleman's name that you were saying so we can shout him out? But the scoring system that you were telling me was like the -2 and then score target 1. Like, I think I'm going to start doing that, dude, because that's what it's all about for me, is having an ethical shot on an animal. Right?
So that's our vice president, Andy Young, who came up with that. And it's a 1 for a kill shot, -2 for a wound, and a 0 for a miss. Yeah. Which is amazing, because you got to think, you don't want to wound an animal while you're out there. You want to make an ethical kill.
Yeah.
So
no, that's a cool system too. And the more I thought about it today after we started shooting, I was like, that makes so much more sense for what I'm trying to achieve.
Rather than the 8s and the 10s and the 12s.
And for people that are just listening to this thing that have never shot a bow in their life, right? Or even at a 3D target, because I don't think a lot of people, I mean, there is a community out there that does that, but I think there's a lot of people that don't shoot 3Ds specifically.
A lot of people shoot bags and they're just trying to hit one dot, whereas the 3Ds gives you an animal aspect of it, and you're looking at lung patterns and you're looking at making an ethical shot.
Yeah, and I think the coolest thing too is, first off, genuinely, I want to thank you and your family for the time that you've put in up there at American Bowmen. It's an incredible freaking place, incredible course, with 40 pristine targets that are all Reinhardt, nice 3D life-size animal targets. Just cool. There's not a bunch of bullshit out there. Like some of these shoots that I go to, you'll have a velociraptor or a yeti or something like that. And I love the fact that you guys have kept it that Western hunt, big game animals. There are some smaller targets out there too, like the lynx out
beaver.
there are my arch nemesis. There's a few rabbits. Yeah. And normally you've placed them really nice behind with a nice rock backdrop.
So that you're smashing an arrow.
Yeah. I think I mentioned this today to you earlier. You guys need an arrow sponsor up there. The arrow company should be giving you money.
Right.
From where you place some of those targets.
Right. Well, and I've got to give it up to the group of guys that come out there with us, because it's not just me and my family. We've got at least 10 to 15 members coming out to every work party, mowing grass and setting up targets, setting up shots, even going, hey, look at this shot. This would be a cool shot. And we move a pin so that we are getting those cool shots and getting them through the trees and really making it hunting experience side of things.
Well, and I think a lot of guys, and I'm guilty of this too for a long time, because I would go to 3D shoots because I honestly have more fun at a 3D shoot, or like today, than I do hunting. Because you get so many, I know, yeah. I think that for me, a lot of it is shooting my bow. I have more fun shooting my bow, right?
Than running around looking for an animal.
Yeah. And one arrow, right? One arrow, one chance. I got 40 fucking chances today, and more than that if you're throwing more than one arrow. I mean, we just shot one arrow at each target today, which was cool, so we could run through the course. But some of those shots too it's so cool because I think a lot of guys just go to a flat range and you're standing on polished concrete and you can nail, 10 rings or 12 rings all day long from 20 yards, right? Indoor, AC, everything's perfect. You don't have your quiver on. You're not wearing a backpack. There's no ranging or judging distances or fucking shooting off of a,
cliff.
50-foot cliff?
Well, it's a 50-degree angle, and it ranges out for like 16 yards. But if you're not looking at the angle compensation, it's a 33-yard shot.
Yeah.
So people aren't thinking of that. Your line of sight might be 33 yards, but you're still only shooting it for 16 yards.
Well, and I think that this is why a lot of bow shops that I go into, they always tell me my draw length is too short. Like it should be a half-inch longer by their IBO, whatever. I don't know. I'm not a bow tech either, so don't hate me on this. But I've always kept it short for that reason because a lot of the shots that I've taken on animals have been in a hill situation. And if you're shooting downhill,
well, and even the
that
side
shorter
hill,
draw length, yeah.
The side hill shots throw people off because you got to make sure your bubble's leveled and get your cant right and everything.
Yeah. No, that's wild too. And shout out to you too, man, for the fucking traditional style. So we're talking about a compound guy versus a traditional guy today, and we shot pretty even, man. Like
the first round was pretty even. The second round, I kind of fell off a little bit there.
That's a much harder side, though, man. That blue side is rough. So I guess to dial it back, if you're listening to this and like, what the fuck are these guys talking about right now, right? These are life-size animals. So like an elk, a moose, a lynx, a mountain lion, bison. Yeah, fucking super cool. Like a lot of them are bucket list hunts for me, right?
Right.
There's a wolf in there. There's
the
caribou, caribous. Yeah, it's awesome, man. The targets range, a lot of turkeys, a lot of black bears, few grizzlies standing, right?
Right.
And a lot of these shots you have to shoot around a tree. There's multiple pins set up on the course depending on your bow setup and your skill level and your age. And so it's a lot. I hate to compare it to this because it's so much better, but it's along the lines of like golf or frisbee golf. There's a scoring system involved. Depending on where you hit that target determines your score. Yeah. We were dialing it back here with a different scoring system that I've never heard of. I've always just shot at the 5, 8, 10 and 12.
Yeah, which is IBO scoring.
Right. Sometimes there's a 14 involved or something too, right?
Yeah, so IBO does 14 rings, which is usually in the top corner of the lung. And that's more for your super, super competitive people. Because if you miss that 14 ring, you're usually getting an 8 or a 5.
Oh, so that's what that little ring is in the top. Really? Huh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah.
What if you accidentally hit it? Can you claim a 14 then?
So
depends on who you're with, right?
In the pro scoring side of things, they actually have to call out their 14 rings and say, hey, I'm going for that 14 ring.
That makes a lot more sense.
Right. So
it's like calling the 8 ball.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's crazy because if you're outside of that, you're a definite 5 or an 8.
Yeah.
There's nothing else around it. Yeah. And the 10 ring, like on the moose is about the size of a freaking
I would say a paper plate.
Yeah.
Good paper plate.
Volleyball maybe. Something like that. Yeah. But it's a lot of fun. And then each target is set up at different ranges. So like what's the furthest shot out there? I think it's about 70 yards.
The moose is about 70 yards. Yeah. So, and it's a big target, so you should be able to hit it, and most proficient archers can. Right. But even like you look at the antelope, I think the antelope's set at like 55,
I think that
56.
range is at 61 just because I've shot it. So so genuinely I want to thank you for inviting me up there in the first place.
Oh yeah.
And being so hospitable, man. Like,
well, and you reached out to us, and I was more than happy to bring you guys out there. I love that. And we were already going out.
Yeah, and we had the whole family. It's a family event, right? That's super cool. And our sons are around the same age, so they were able to like buddy up and shoot, and we were able to shoot. And yeah, shout out to Luke Cadillo as well, man.
Yeah,
because he's the one that connected us to, and he's been on the podcast a couple times, and I love listening to his podcast because it's a little bit different than what we do here.
Yeah. Definitely
a lot different, a lot more comedy. I wish I was as funny as Luke sometimes.
I will never be as funny as Luke.
But yeah, no, he's an interesting guy, and yeah, he connected us too. And I think I called you like, I think it was like a Saturday, and you were like, "What are you doing tomorrow?" or something like that. It was some.
Yeah, it was like a Friday or a Saturday, and I was like, "Well, I'm already headed up. Let's go.
Yeah.
What time?"
Yeah, exactly. And then I was like, "Shit, I better get my shit together." I think I hadn't had my sight tape totally dialed in, and I lucked out that day and didn't shoot too bad. Like, I think I shot like a 150 or something on one of the courses, which is pretty good for me.
Yeah.
With a goal of a 200, right? So like, what's the best that you could shoot on 20 targets? It's
240.
240.
Yeah, and I mean, even when we had people out for Best of the Best, which Aaron and Luke hosted, I think the highest score ended up being like a 216 or a 218.
Really?
So even shooting in the 200s is a dang good day.
Yeah.
So,
No, it's definitely hard on that course. Like we were saying, with some of those variables. I mean, there's some stuff where you have to shoot under trees, around trees. There's one where you're standing in a creek.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got hammered by mosquitoes today.
Almost get carried off.
Yeah. I'm going to be wearing pants the next time, but it wasn't that bad. Yeah. They don't bug me that bad, but I see you guys always wearing these like lightweight pants, and I think that's a reason why I don't wear, because I have a lot of jeans in the closet and stuff, and I have some hunt pants, but I don't really want to be the guy out there in full camo, like
no,
kind of look like an idiot.
I pretty much bought the lightweight pants because I'm always out there, and
yeah,
it makes sense because it's hot and it can get just humid right by that creek, so you can get some lightweight pants and not have the bugs attacking your legs as bad.
What do you like to rock these days?
I've been rocking the Piranhas. Yeah.
Okay. Is that like a hunting pant, or is it?
They're more of an outdoor hiking pant.
Okay.
But I know Aaron Snyder actually has some new pants coming out through
really?
Born Primitive, and they're pretty sweet. He had them on a couple weeks ago while he was up there, and they're looking amazing. And they're meant to be a hunting pant, but he's actually got them in base colors and more earth tones so that you can rock them whenever. So you're not rocking that camo out there.
Yeah, and he's a guy that kind of hunts in earth tones too. He's not your traditional camo guy, right? If I recall. Like, I love his podcast too, so shout out to Aaron. I mean, we're shouting out people left and right up here in the community. And I guess Aaron's really not in the community. Well, I mean, he is, but he's moved to Wyoming or something, right?
Yeah, he moved up to Riverton with Kafaru, and he's a huge influencer for me and a good friend. So he actually is the one who introduced me to Luke Cadillo.
Oh, okay.
So,
Nice.
because I knew him from back shooting at Bear Creek Lake Park.
Okay.
So
nice. Is that like an outdoor range out there or something? I've never been to that.
Yeah, so it's literally just an outdoor range. They've got hay bales out there. So it's that same thing you were talking about. You're standing on concrete, shooting just 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 yards and just a flat area.
Yeah. And not to knock any of the other 3D courses around here either, but I don't think that you will find, I mean, short of going to like a total archery challenge, which is a tour, right, that you only get to shoot once a year.
Right.
I don't think that I've been on quite a few 3D courses in the state of Colorado, and I would say your guys' is probably the closest to like that tack mentality. Like, if you were training for tack specifically, I would recommend American Bowmen, hands down.
Well, and we just want to set up for the people, for the average everyday hunter to get out there and actually practice the skill and actually get shots that are realistic in the world. So,
yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense, and that's why I enjoy going out there. I try to go out there twice a week, like I was telling you. It doesn't always work out, but, man, it just puts me in a good mood. I'm happy right now,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it can either put you in a good mood or a bad mood, depending on your shooting.
Yeah.
So,
if your bow's not set up, I don't suggest going out there because you're probably going to spend $100 in arrows maybe, depending on what you're shooting.
Well, and we've seen people walk out there with 6 arrows in their quiver and destroy all 6 and still walk out with a smile, and you're like, okay,
right,
we did our job.
Yeah, no, that's great. So you guys have a bunch of events coming up too, like, so if the general public, so this is a private club, right?
Correct. Yeah. So it's all membership based. We usually run about 8-9 shoots a year. But we've got some pretty cool events coming up here pretty quick.
There's at least like one a month pretty much, right? In the summer months.
I try and put on 2 a month, depending on who it's with, depends on the pricing side of things. And this is actually our Instagram.
Pictures here. And we're going to have a direct link to American Bowmen in the show notes here. So if you guys wanted to figure out a shoot where you could come up and try it, and the shoots are awesome because there's always either a local archery shop involved or some sort of foundation. A lot of the proceeds that you guys do a lot of benefit shoots and stuff like that. And you actually have one coming up here pretty soon, right? I got an email about it or something.
Hero Sports is actually teaming up with us to do a benefit side of things. We've got a couple giveaways going, and that's going to be August 7th. So we actually dropped one of our other shoots that was supposed to be Father's Day.
Okay.
Because they had some issues going on that they couldn't do the shoot this year. So we're teaming up with Hero Sports, which Luke Cadillo actually hooked us up with.
Oh, nice.
And we're going to do some giveaways through there and really get some things going and hopefully get some people there and charge $40 at the door and get some money to Hero Sports so that they can continue to help veterans.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
What is Hero Sports exactly? Do you know what the foundations? I'm sure that you do.
So they actually help out veterans. So they'll take them to like UFC fights and other games. They do a lot of sporting events. They actually set up some baseball teams so that veterans can have a place to link up and kind of connect with each other and help each other through their situations. They take some veterans on hunts down in Texas, stuff like that. So
that's super cool, man. I'm involved with a nonprofit here called River Deep Foundation, and I should connect you guys with Bob. Actually, he'd be good. And they do a lot down at Rocky Mountain. I know Tom does a ton with them at Rocky Mountain Specialty Gear, and they're along those lines. So they take people from Craig Hospital and veterans, and I don't think that there's any better connection if you're into outdoor stuff, and a lot of those guys are into outdoor type things, right?
Right.
I don't think there's any better connection or a way to have a good time without like any sort of judgment than going to some of these events and just like truly getting people, like, no matter what their disability is, get them shooting a bow or a gun or fly fishing, or even if it's a spin rod, like, it's so cool.
Nature just is relaxing and calming, and you can forget about the rest of the world side of things and really just be out there and be in yourself and really thinking about life in general.
I mean, that's really why I enjoy getting on the course by myself sometimes too, because like the cell phone doesn't work up there.
No.
It's fucking great.
Which is fantastic.
It's like 35 minutes from here, right? So what, an hour from Denver probably, if depending on where you live, right?
I mean, it takes me about 45 minutes to an hour from Highlands Ranch to get up there, so it's not bad at all.
Yeah, and it's great. And I mean, you're in the middle. How many acres is American Bowmen?
52.
Really?
Yeah. So we've got quite a bit of acreage.
Land, yeah.
And it keeps growing, keeps going, and membership is good, and we do still have some spots available for membership. So,
oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, because there is some caps on it, right?
Yeah. So we are capped out at 175 at this point, and I think we're right around 150 members.
Thank God I got in.
Yeah.
Last month or whatever it was, right?
So, and it's growing quick, and we always have some members drop off every year. So we haven't hit a wait list period at all. So
is there any reason that you wouldn't be able to become a member? Like, do you guys, because like I went up there and like some of these I've applied at other 3D ranges before, and I haven't had, and I'm not going to name names, but I haven't had as good a response as I got from you. I mean, you invited me with open arms to bring my whole entire family up, and you spent the morning with us, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the way I think our community should be. We're all just trying to get out there and shoot our bows.
Yeah.
Like, let's go then. Let's not make this a hard to get into thing, because if we keep making hunting exclusive, we're going to die out.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be a thing that continues on. So we're not going to see our kids hunting and get to take them out hunting and really doing these things that we love. So
No, I couldn't agree more with you, man. And I was kind of mentioning that, between our sons, and my son is really the catalyst for me getting back into hunting seriously, right? Because he showed some interest in it. And I think it's important for a kid to have. I learned a lot of values. I learned a lot of how to handle adversity, right? On my first hunts, like
even
climbing up the side of it.
self-discipline, the adaptability and the growth that
consistency,
gets there.
Right?
Yeah.
Like if you want to hunt with a bow, you have to consistently. I'm sure that there's guys out there and will argue with me that you don't have to. And I know multiple archery hunters are like, dude, I don't pick up my bow until
a month before,
and August 28th, and I'm dialed every year. And I'm like, okay, whatever. But I take a little bit different approach. Like the more time that I can spend behind the riser and the more arrows that I can get downrange in a safe spot is important to me, because I know, and then I'll range myself, like I might go to American Bowmen and shoot 60 yards at that elk, but I don't know that I would take that shot hunting, like that's a
long poke,
that's
for
a long
time for an animal to move and jump string, and
foam targets don't move, right?
No. Yeah. So
then you got that whole adrenaline rush dump that's happening all at the same time, and
your shooting definitely goes downhill on a live animal,
especially when they're bugling or something like that, and it's just a whole.
Or you've had a
level.
long 6-7 days out in the backcountry, and then
Yeah,
all of a sudden
you've
it's
hiked
right
15
there.
miles. And that's another thing I really enjoy about up there is, like, right out of the gate, we shot the red side first, right?
Yeah.
I always get the two sides confused.
See, I always call them the east and west side because I can't remember.
So red would be west?
West.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense to me. I'm much more of a directional driven person.
Yeah.
Or that my brain works better that way. But yeah, that red side, like right out of the gate, you're probably at least 200 feet in elevation up and down.
Just real quick.
So the heart rate's going. So you kind of mimic some of those things in hunting a little bit that can happen, right? Because if you're doing a spot and stalk on an animal, and I tend to hold my breath when I'm doing that, right?
Yeah.
By accident.
You might be hiking right up and turning around and taking a shot real quick.
Yeah.
Or you might be sitting there for a while and waiting for an animal to stand, but you still want to get that heart rate up and elevated and going.
It's so good. And then, the different angles and stuff. So yeah, man, I'm having a blast up there. And I urge anybody that's listening to this that lives in the area, or maybe you're just visiting, like if somebody was just visiting, can they reach out and come on the course?
I've had people hit me up, and we've gone out and just shot. So it's definitely a good thing. Now, it all depends on my scheduling and everything, because I do work Monday through Friday. But usually I can hook them up with somebody and go, hey, would you guys mind shooting with somebody, and they're in town? And
yeah, super cool. Yeah, and the whole group of guys up there is, I haven't met anybody that isn't awesome. And a lot of times I have the course to myself, because I typically go up during the week early in the morning, like that first light type thing.
Well, and even yesterday I was there, and there were probably 10, 15 people out there. I had to make it a point to wait for some people that I wanted to see to even see them. And if you're just getting there and going out, a lot of time you don't run into anybody.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Now, I think another thing that is super cool about American Bowmen is you guys have really, I feel safe there, right?
Yeah.
Because at some of these other archery shoots that I've been to, like to hear arrows crashing through the trees and not too far from you does not make me feel comfortable, man.
No.
Like I think I'd rather get shot by a gun. Now maybe not, but I don't want to get shot by anything. Let's just put it that way.
And we kind of plan it out, and then we always are tweaking it. So we'll see something that we're like, is this really the right thing? Do we need to move this target, move that target, move these shooting pins to make it safer for people? And we kind of have borderlines where even on the separate courses, that shot can't go that way because that's going towards the other course or this or that. And really just planning that out to make sure that, you have a safe backdrop on every single shot. You're not shooting towards another one. Even a ricochet can't go towards that.
Yeah.
So.
No, I think that's super important, and I feel super safe whenever I'm up there, especially if nobody's on the course. If I'm the first guy to put up the flag,
yeah,
feeling pretty good, you know?
Well, and even when we left, there was somebody out there. We wouldn't have known had there not been a sign-in book.
Right.
Or
yeah, so you guys have a whole
lot.
system that comes along with that, right, too?
Right.
So, like, and there's some responsibilities there, too. Like, if you're a member, right, you have to be conscious of that and conscious of other people. You don't want to be going through the course backwards or
right. And
anything like that, right?
We even have a rule that if you're looking for an arrow that's behind a target, you're putting your bow in front of that target so that somebody sees your bow sitting
I should have
there.
read the rule book.
Well, if you don't miss, you're good.
I don't. No, I did miss.
You
one
had
target
one
today.
You had
right?
one today.
Yeah.
That's it.
No, that makes a lot of sense though too. No, it's an awesome spot. I urge anybody, like I was saying before, if you have the time or you have any sort of interest in archery, obviously go to one of these awesome archery shops that we have here in town, like Rocky Mountain Specialty Gear. I highly recommend to anybody that's just getting into it, because you can get set up with whatever bow you want there. They'll let you shoot and try some different stuff.
Well,
but then
and even
the
give you some coaching
is world class with the Clums, and anybody else down there, Alex, any of those guys, Danny,
Well,
Jerry's awesome down there too for kids. I've taken my son down, and those guys are incredible down there.
Well, and you've got some other great shops out there too. No Limits with Phil Mendoza.
No Limits is great.
Bo is there. Jason is there. You've got Bear Creek, which is a bunch of good group of guys too, with Dave running that shop.
Yeah, no.
So
there's some awesome shooters in there too.
Right. We've got Denver area has a really good group of shops. So we really can't complain there. And a lot of time it's picking which one you like or which one's closer to you and really going to those shops.
Yeah, and they all kind of carry different bows and stuff, right? So there's a couple different things to archery here too that you need to consider if you're just diving into it. Like, you shoot traditionally,
right?
And you just made the switch the last
9-10 months.
Yeah. So I don't know how. There's all these different terms, and I know what I like to shoot and what I have fun shooting. So I don't know the technical terms here, but yours would be considered a bare bow, right? Because there's no sights.
Right.
Basically, all you have on your bow is a quiver, a string, some limbs, and a riser, and
that's it.
That's it.
No sight, no anything like that.
Yeah.
And I actually, when I was shooting compound, it started to get to be a chore because I was just shooting so well, and it wasn't difficult anymore. So then when I did make the switch to recurve, it's a lot more difficult. It's a lot more, if you mess up, that arrow's going somewhere else.
Right.
So.
Yeah, because my bow is so mechanical, right? Like, I have trigger release. I got, adjustable sight that I can dial. Like, when I range a target and it says 61 yards, I set my sight at 61. And there's all these different things out there. Like, I shot fixed pin for a lot of years, and I still kind of toss that around in my head. Like, I think I liked hunting with fixed pin better just because it's less adjustment, it's less moving parts, it's less, there's all that sort of shit that kind of
gets in the way.
It gets in the way. So, like, if I ran up on a bull and he's 40 yards and my pin's set at 20, I'm not going to know what to do until I adjust that sight.
Right.
And there's some time involved, right? I got to undo this. It might be a half a second, but a half a second can be
the world. It can mean a shot or a no shot.
Yeah.
So, I used to do a 5-pin slider. And so that I had that 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, and then could still slide out if I needed to follow up or anything like that.
Yeah. I'm shooting, God, I don't know I don't even know what my sight is. This is bad. It's the Hogfather, so I don't know who makes it.
So it's Spot Hog then.
Spot Hog, yeah. And I love that freaking sight. I actually got the dual pin, which is kind of cool because then, you have two dials on there. So, like, if I'm set on my 20 and the way that, with my arrow weight and everything, the way that my bow shoots, it's pretty awesome because that next pin is 35.
Yeah.
So
you've got a good spread there.
Yeah.
And if you get good enough, you can sit and pin gap it, which means kind of watching so that would mean your 29 is probably right about that middle side of things, so you can put the animal right between those two.
Yeah. No, I definitely like that double pin. So I think I've hunted with it for 1 year and I haven't had any issues, but I didn't bag an elk last year, and that's typically where I have trouble, because where I hunt deer is a bit more it is private.
Yeah.
So they're not a bit more not as skittish, I guess I should say. But
yeah.
Well, so I have a little bit more time to make corrections and that sort of thing. But with elk, man, I've not missed with my arrow. I have missed elk with my arrow. I'm not gonna lie about that. But I mean, I've missed shots because I wasn't prepared or ready or set up, or maybe you draw and they blow out and then you don't have a shot, like.
Well, and sometimes it's you've got such a small window of opportunity to actually make it happen.
Yeah.
That it can go quick.
And that's one thing I noticed, like shooting with you today and the couple times that we've shot together, is like I roll up to the target. Obviously my pin's a bit further back than yours.
Yeah.
But it's like the setup time, because I pull out the rangefinder, I look, then I got to dial my sight, then I knock my arrow, then I have my whole shot mantra because I'm a psychopath, right? Or I was coached well, I guess. So yeah, it's just like I always feel when I'm with a trad guy, I guess I don't feel rushed, but I feel like I'm taking a lot of time.
Yeah.
Is it noticeable? Do you hate shooting with a compound guy? Like, you can say it on here, dude. I know we're friends, but
it takes time.
Right.
But yeah, if you go through with a couple recurve guys, 3 recurve guys can be quicker than 1 compound guy going through that course.
I know. Because like when I shot with you and my son, because you guys all shoot traditionally. My son's one up in me too. On the traditional side. I've given him the out multiple times, like, hey, you want to shoot a compound? I have this old one. It can adjust down. My backup bow, he could shoot,
Yeah.
But he's sticking to the trad, which
As
is
he
super
should.
cool. Yeah.
As he should.
So what really made you make that switch?
So I had already been debating that switch just because it was getting to be a chore shooting a compound. And I had quite a few guys hand me their recurve just to shoot at the range real quick. And it was a lot more fun. It was a lot more intensity into it and thinking about your shot and focusing on your aim and everything. And I just fell in love with that side of things. So I was planning on making the switch, but I ended up breaking my compound bow out hunting. So
Really?
It forced me into the spot where I was buying a bow. So it was either buy another compound, which was becoming a chore, or buy a recurve and fall in love with archery.
So you made that switch during September or hunting season, yeah?
September. I broke my bow second day out. Slipped in a creek and actually hit my string up against a rock, snapped the string, cracked both limbs. So it was game over. So.
And what were you shooting before?
I was shooting a Hoyt.
Okay.
So.
Is it one of the carbon bows or?
No, it was an aluminum bow.
Okay.
And it's no fault to the bow itself. I mean, any bow that it's pretty much like dry firing it when you snap that string.
Right.
Any bow is not going to stand up to that very well. So,
dude, I bet you must have been pissed off, huh?
Oh, that was a long 5-hour drive home.
Oh, you were 5 hours out too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So did you made the switch? Did you stop hunting or did you get dialed in? And
so I knew that I wasn't proficient enough to go hunting that season. So I still had, I think, 6 or 7 days off. And I was like, there's no way I can take this thing out and ethically try.
That's good on you too, because I think a lot of guys, like those guys that we were talking about, I find it hard to believe that somebody can pick up their bow a week before hunting season and be confident in a shot.
I guarantee that anyone who picks up their bow a week before season is not going to shoot near as well as somebody who practices even once a month throughout the year. There's no way.
Yeah, I don't think you can. I think for me, I try to shoot daily. It doesn't always happen, but it's important to me. I think just from the mental aspect too, what archery does for me, just the decompression, or, some people meditate, some people go to yoga class or whatever, but that is my outlet, just to shut the brain off.
Out
and
go.
like you don't have to be a hunter to pick up a bow either. I mean, there's so many awesome archery shops, 3D courses, 3D competitions.
Well, and there's even people who are shooting paper.
Yeah.
That are just looking for a 10 spot. And we have some of those members out there that they don't go hunting, but they love the sport of archery. So even if you're a person who doesn't want to go hunting and want to come join the club, we're open to that. We love that because it's about the love of archery, not necessarily the love of hunting. So,
yeah, no, I think that that's important too. Like, if you have any inclination to go do it, I just urge anybody to do it, man, because I get so much enjoyment out of it. I'm passionate about it, I guess, but that is a big part of me being happy or not, right? Like, if I go a week without shooting my bow, which happens,
yeah,
especially if I'm on the road or something, like I take some of these jobs sometimes, and to the point where I bought a travel case
just to bring your bow.
Yeah. I should start traveling with the target so I can shoot in my hotel rooms or something.
Right, something small. All of a sudden, an arrow goes through the wall.
Yeah. Probably not a smart idea. Don't take that advice. But yeah, no, I definitely, if I don't shoot weekly, at least 60 arrows or something a week, I have to. But I like to get 60 arrows a day if I can.
Right, and it definitely affects your mood. Like,
yeah,
it's that relaxation period and really just focusing on one thing.
No, I couldn't agree more. It's definitely, I think too, for diving back into the military side of stuff, and what I found is a lot of guys make that transition from the military to hunting, whether it's with a rifle or bow, but a lot of guys dive into that archery world because it is that whole sense of having all your gear dialed, right? And being organized and having
the
going
discipline.
on a hunt is almost like a mission. I know you can't compare the two because you're not getting shot at back, or there's not these high stakes. You're probably not going in a helicopter. Guys like you and I aren't anyways.
No.
And would that really make it that much fun? We were kind of chatting that up this morning on the range. Like, I was asking you about a bison hunt, and I strictly want to do it for the meat, and I'm intrigued because Donnie Dust just got to go do it,
right?
Primitively with an atlatl and stuff,
which is still amazing.
And I love the meat. Yeah, super cool. Not only that, he processed the whole thing with one of these stone
point, which is crazy to think about. Like,
because think about how much goes into just cutting up an elk with
a sharp
pristine,
knife that's perfect.
Yeah. I mean, I have these amazing half-face blades that my buddy Andy Arabito makes, and they're so sharp and so nice to use and stuff. But that stone point's the next level, man. Like,
it's a crazy jump.
Yeah. No, I'm gonna try to get Donnie out too.
Yeah,
to
we
the
definitely
course.
should.
Yeah.
I think you would enjoy
with your
it.
blessing.
Yeah.
So let's talk about. But anyways, I'm sorry. Back. I'm gonna dial it back here for a minute because I'm getting excited talking about all this. But we were just talking about, like, I would like to go on a bison hunt, and you had mentioned going on like a timber bison hunt, like somewhere up in Alaska or Canada or something, right? Which would be super cool. But I think that there's, and I'm not knocking this, but it's just not my flavor to go out to the ranch and drive out there in a side-by-side, and, it's kind of like.
Don't forget the tractor to pick it up.
Yeah, there you go. That sort of thing. So as much as I want the meat, I'm dibble-dabbling with that because I am a very much like get into a wilderness area and hunt elk,
Yeah. Yeah, usually I go 5 miles back in and really try and just tent it up and go.
Yeah.
So it makes it a fun journey, and it's an experience regardless of whether you harvest an animal or not.
So in your hunt trips and your experience, are you typically backpack hunting, or do you have like a base camp, and then because typically what I do is we'll have a base camp. I'm not gonna lie, my camper might be there sometimes.
Yeah.
But then from there we'll spike camp out. If you're going 12 miles back in, you don't want to be making that journey every day. It takes a fucking ton of time. A lot of times it's at elevation.
So we literally throw everything on our back and go.
Just go, huh?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Which is fantastic because we get back in there and you wake up 30, 45 minutes before the sun rises and get out to your spot and start glassing. So you're glassing right as soon as sunlight comes up. You're not worried about hiking in or anything like that. And it makes it a lot more enjoyable, I think, for me. Like, yeah, you're way back in there. It's not quite as comfortable as it would be in a camper, but there's something about it that just, it's serene to me.
Yeah, no, it is great. And I actually enjoy, you know, those times that I've spent out where it's just like, I'm not going back to base camp. It's nice to have that to fall back to.
Yeah. But
yeah, no, I don't know. You keep one up on me here. Traditional archery.
Sorry.
No, it's awesome.
Now, there have been some miserable times out there. Yeah. Not going to lie. One year, me and my friend got poured on, just absolutely drenched, and it was a cold night. So,
yeah. So, what's in your backpack, I guess, when you're out?
Usually it's sleeping bag, clothes, food, and that's about it. Like, it's just the bare essentials. And then I'll carry my glass and my bow.
No tent, no nothing.
We'll do tent. Okay. So, yeah, but we get there, we'll set up our camp, and then that thing stays up until we leave. So
nice. And how often do you get to go out for a week at a time, or how?
So usually I schedule it 8 days. Okay. So we'll be out there for 8 days, food on our back, and go.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm hoping this year. I've scheduled 3 weeks off, but we'll see. And I can guarantee there won't be any podcasts coming out in September.
As there shouldn't be. Yeah. The time's dedicated for hunting.
No, there was a couple times where I had like a sponsor hit me up and they were out here on an elk hunt. And I was like, oh, God, I guess I better go back. But
this year, like,
I'm just letting them know, like, yeah, September's out.
No.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the plan. So we'll see. Because last year just got cut way too short for me between everything. So the nice thing is some of my deer tags go like all the way to, I think, November or something.
Nice.
The leftover deer tag that I get. So that's nice that I can concentrate on elk and then
get
dial
two
it back
on deer.
Yeah.
See, and usually I like to join the two up. So I'll have my elk tag, but I always put in for my deer tag in the same area.
Mm-hmm.
I never focus on the deer, but if there happens to be a deer standing there, it might be getting an arrow flung at it.
Because how often does that happen, man? Like, I can't count the times that I've been able in the last couple of years to shoot a moose.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's
and
crazy.
The moose population in Colorado is absolutely fantastic right now.
It's so awesome.
And
I'm hoping that doesn't change here in the next couple of years, but...
It might.
Yeah.
Especially with wolves possibly coming in, and it's going to change our dynamic quite a bit.
Yeah, I know. That's a big thing, man. This whole legislative thing of trying to manage wildlife or what they think they're doing. It's not even really managing wildlife. It's
ballot box biology.
Yeah, it's based on whether
Feelings.
you think an animal should be there or not. And they're not looking at science, right? Like we've had Colorado Parks and Wildlife in. We've had... multiple biologists and they all say the same thing. It's all about managing populations. Emotion. Yeah. And, so yeah, I'm hoping that doesn't change. And a great organization, you and I were talking about this earlier too, is that Howl for Wildlife, man, is amazing. The emails that they send me, we've done a podcast with Charles and plan to do more with him in the future.
Well,
because it really shows what these ballot initiatives are. No matter which way you're voting, you can go there and get some logical information. It's easy to contact, your local senators, or even if you're out of state, right? Like I have emailed senators in different states on different situations because they're asinine to me, right?
Well, and
I'm not afraid to say it, but
you look at some of the stuff that they're bringing up, even in other states, eventually other states are going to follow suit. So if we don't fight that right at the beginning, other states are just going to continue to follow suit, and we will lose our hunting rights if we continue down a path.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the coolest things about Howl for Wildlife is you can get ahead of it before it even goes to the ballot box, right?
Right.
Like some of these initiatives, I wish that would have been in place when they were voting on wolves, because that was such a close. I mean, I think it was like 56 to 54% or something, or whatever. That's 110%. Whatever it was. It was like 51 and
close.
49 or something. Like, it was so razor thin close.
Well, and now they're even talking about getting rid of Robertson Pittman.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely crazy. I mean, you think of a lot of the dollars that go into wildlife conservation, and that's
so much. It's
from
the
that.
backbone of it, really.
Yeah. And that was started, 80 years ago?
Yeah, that's wild. And for people that don't know what Robertson
Pittman.
Okay. Don't know what that act is. So basically any firearm sold, whether it's for hunting or not, backpacks, I think
any gear used for it, so ammo, just anything in that hunting that could be used for that hunting world is going towards this Robertson Pittman Act, and that's going directly back into conservation in the U.S. So to get rid of that, we're going to lose a lot of our
billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that helps with game management and to pay more biologists and to have better wildlife populations.
And it's not only that, but it's also helping conserve those federal lands that everyone is enjoying. You're going mountain biking on those lands. You're going hiking out on those lands. People are doing photography on those lands. So you're not looking at just affecting hunting by taking away Robertson Pittman. You're affecting the land itself.
Yeah, which is a great point. I always thought that they should blanket it a little bit more. I mean, maybe start another one for just people that are backpacking or buying, like anything that you buy at REI. I think it would be awesome if there was some sort of tax on that to put back into
the conservation side.
The conservation side, whether you're hunting or not, right?
Right. Because we're all enjoying these lands, and we've got to keep these lands here for the next generations.
Yeah, 100%, man. And that's one of the things I love about Colorado is I think like 40% of the state is public land, which is wild. Right. Gabby, you might need to look this up just so I'm right on that. But I'm pretty sure like 40% of the state is public land, and how much I use it, my family uses it, people that I know that come from out of state and use it, places that I can send people.
Right.
I mean, it's incredible.
36.
36.
That's
okay.
Still close to 40.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
pretty
a huge
darn
chunk.
close.
And a lot of the wilderness areas you can get lost in. Just
big time.
Get out there and see nobody for days at a time,
which is great. And a lot of the like search and rescue stuff that we've had in here, like Alpine Search and Rescue, they're all volunteer based and stuff, and they I think that they get some of their funding from some of that like federal money that's coming in, the
Robertson Pittman.
Just screwing it up. I haven't even been drinking today.
Jeez.
Yeah, I just got my archery buzz. But yeah, no, I think that they get some of their funding from like some of those spots. So just think about if you're in the backcountry and you have an issue with one of your kids or yourself.
Yeah.
Or, right? Like,
well, and every hunting tag that's sold comes with a search and rescue fee. So they're even getting money off of the hunting tags. Even if it's a hiker loss, they're dipping into that money. So your hunting side of things is still funding a lot of search and rescues and stuff like that can help anyone out.
Yeah, no, check out Howl for Wildlife. They're great. Like I said, no matter what side of the fence you're on, it's not really party driven. It's strictly based around wildlife facts and what's happening on a worldwide level. They don't cover stuff just in the U.S., I don't think. I think it's worldwide. And Blood Origins, I don't know if you've checked them out at all.
I have not.
Super awesome. Can you look up Blood Origins, Gabby, just so I can make sure I got... they cover a lot of these issues too, and I think that they are tight with Charles. I know those two guys are tight. Yeah, Blood Origins podcast is great. It's another one that's doing amazing stuff for conservation. So anytime that I can shout those guys out, I really appreciate what they're doing, and they're doing it worldwide as well.
Nice.
So, two super awesome spots to get information if you're interested in what's going on. And it's weird. A lot of these things, especially nowadays, don't take precedence at the ballot box. It's kind of one of those, it's something that's kind of slipped in there, I feel like sometimes.
Yeah.
And it may not be. I mean, it's still got to go through the judicial system to get onto a ballot or even proposed, right?
Right.
But there's so many issues, right? Like all the division that we have in the country right now, just from the left and the right, who's paying attention to wildlife? Nobody but hunters, really, right?
Right.
And how many hunters do you know that voice their opinions? It's hard for them to find time. These are the blue collar people of the U.S. that have full-time jobs and don't have time to pay attention to every little thing. And they're spending most of their time in the outdoors, right? So it's kind of like a behind the...
And they're disconnecting from the world. They're usually turning their phones off and getting out there in the middle of nowhere, or they don't even have service where they're going.
Right.
So...
Yeah, no. So I think it's important too, as hunters, or if you're outdoors person, or just whatever, to pay attention to some of these things now, because it seems like I never remember this being an issue when I was a kid. I don't ever remember
Yeah, but think about it. In '92 is when they outlawed spring bear hunting. That was when we were both kids, couldn't vote, and that's something that we may never get back, but. Right now, they're having so many issues with black bears.
It's insane.
And if we would have kept that season, that would have helped in that side of things.
Yeah, it's wild because I think now you can pretty much get an add-on bear tag in any area. No questions asked, really. No draw, no nothing. That's how bad the population is. And we're even seeing it here, and I would consider this suburban mountains, right? Like Evergreen is very much that. There's a ton of people that live here, even though not a ton, but 9,000 is a lot for this area.
Yeah, but there's a lot more in this area than there was when we were kids.
Oh, 100%.
So,
and we're seeing, I have a bear in our neighborhood every night.
Right.
Guaranteed, And even with the private land that I hunt on is 350 acres. Like when we're in there, it's more dangerous than being in a wilderness area because these bears are so used to people and used to their food source, and they're not scared of anything.
No.
So yeah, I don't know, man. The more that we can get in front of stuff like that, it's going to be a safer place if you're a backpacker or your kids are out playing at night. I don't let my kids play in our front yard at dusk unless I'm out there with them.
Right.
It's just that way. I mean, I know that we have cats. We've seen cats come through my yard too. And you're talking about 120-pound animal that's a killer.
Right. Drag a deer up a tree.
And I know that it's very uncommon, and maybe I'm being overprotective, and I don't want to be that helicopter parent, But I also let Tyler climb up a 40-foot cliff and make a shot on a ram too. So it's like...
But there's that other side of... We have seen it where a mountain lion has grabbed a kid.
Yeah, in this area.
Up in Bailey.
Yeah.
So it's not unheard of.
I think that was off of like a trampoline too or something. Wasn't it? Did he grab him off of a trampoline?
I don't remember, but yeah,
I mean,
they were
that's
just playing in the
move,
backyard.
Yeah. Even as a cat.
There were other kids around. So
right. Yeah, and we've had Scott Murdoch in from Colorado Division of Wildlife and or Colorado Parks and Wildlife now. And he's talked about, I think it's like 95% of the attacks are on people that are smaller, right? So kids, dogs, people smaller in stature. So I don't know. I always just feel like they're not going to try to take a fat ass down. If my kids are playing around, safe, but you can't outrun the fucking things, man. No. Like there's no way.
They're going way too quick.
I think a cheetah runs like 72 miles an hour, right?
Well, in a mountain lion, you got to think they're sitting up in a tree half the time, and you're not going to see them.
Yeah.
So
and they're super quiet.
Yeah.
Like I think all the time that I've spent, as a kid growing up here, being in the backcountry, hunting, doing whatever, camping. I mean, I've cut tracks quite a few times, but to actually see one in the wild, I don't think I've ever seen one like in the backcountry. On my own. Like obviously if there's a dog involved or something like that and you're actually tracking them,
You'll
is
see 'em,
really
but-
about the only way, man. They're so elusive. And we know the population here is dense, right?
Right, they're
Like,
there.
especially down by like Deckers and like some of those areas down there. It is insane the size of the cats that are down there because their food source is phenomenal, right? Yeah. Some big cats. So yeah, that makes me nervous. So I just don't like, that's one of the things that I start helicopter parenting as, like,
I don't know if you can even call that helicopter parenting or even just being
just
smart.
conscious, right? It's living
Right.
with wildlife, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't know. You grew up here, right? Let's dive into your background a
Yeah,
little bit.
so I
'cause-
grew up in Southwest Denver. My grandparents had a cabin up here in Evergreen. So I was always out in the mountains, always out roaming. And I mean, I would even go get lost for 2-3 hours, and my parents didn't care. They were like, okay, see you later.
Right.
So I was always running around in the mountains and doing my thing.
Yeah, I remember as a kid, I would tell my mom, like, hey, I'm going to go camping for the weekend. And it was like, okay,
see
make
ya.
sure you're back by Sunday because you got school on Monday morning, like that sort of
Right.
thing. And it was just like, and I think that I was maybe like 9, 10, 11 years old, somewhere in there. And that
Right.
we were just out and we were actually camping, Sometimes we lied. Sometimes we were riding our BMX bikes down to Red Rocks because the Grateful Dead were playing and we could see naked hippie chicks or whatever, but
Just going for it.
but we were still camping. We were camping down there.
Right.
But yeah, I think that, just the influx in people and us pushing into those habitats have made that more. I feel like those animals are traveling into these spots and different food sources. And then you outlaw hunting on some of them, like bears.
Yeah.
And it's not completely outlawed, but you take away an entire hunting season, which animals are hard enough to hunt anyways. And the success rates, like if you look at like elk hunting success rates, they
low.
are very low. Yeah. I want to say it's like maybe 20% or something like that. Guys maybe fill their tags a year.
Right. And archery's even lower at that
Right.
point in time. So, because I think archery, it's like 10%.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is insane. So you have a 1 in 10. For every 10 years you go, you should be killing an elk.
One elk.
And that doesn't account for the savages like Aaron Snyder or somebody up there
That are killing
kill an elk
every
year,
year.
or Cameron Haynes or
South
those guys.
Cox.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that 10%. That's pretty insane. That is super minimal. It makes a lot of sense why I didn't kill an elk last year now.
Right?
Yeah. So you spent a lot of times up here, or you spent a lot of time up here. Have you lived anywhere else outside the state, or what?
No, I pretty much, so I moved out of Southwest Denver into Jefferson County. And then shortly after we had our son, we moved up here to Pine. So we've lived kind of in this area our whole lives. So my wife grew up here as well. So
Really, that's awesome, man. It's very seldom that you run into people that have been in Colorado that long. So, growing up as a kid, were you a hunter then?
yeah,
Your
yeah.
dad
So
take
my
you out or
dad
anything?
always took me out hunting. He was always muzzleloader or rifle. And I actually only switched to archery because where I worked at a tire shop. Well, wintertime, that October, November is your busiest time of year, so you can't get any time off. So I was like,
that's a
well,
horrible place to be a bow hunter, right?
right. So I'm like, well, if I do archery, I can go a month earlier before our busy season, and we can
That's
go.
why you switched to
So
archery.
that's why I switched to archery, is because it was September. We're not in that October, November when everyone's getting winter tires put on. And I fell in love with archery. So
how long have you been at archery?
so
Then-
I've actually been shooting archery for like 6 years.
Okay.
So not a very long time compared to a lot of people. But I'm very, very dedicated into it and usually shooting every weekend.
Yeah, I know you're up there all the time. What was kind of your first hunt that you kind of remember as a kid, and like how old, and like your first big game hunt?
So I was like 9 when I went out with my dad one year. We went out muzzle loading, so it was him and a whole bunch of his buddies. And my first experience was elk. So he went out. We were all sitting there kind of just relaxing, and me being a young kid, all just entertained and excited and jacked up, I was sitting there with the binos, just continuously glassing, looking in the trees. And I looked at my dad and I go, Dad, there's elk in the trees right now. He's like, no, there's not. Stop it. And him and one of my uncles were sitting there calling back and forth. They were probably 500 yards away from each other, but my dad was just kind of cow calling and my uncle was bugling. And I'm like, no, Dad, there's elk in the trees. Well, sure enough, 30 minutes later, here steps out a cow elk. He's like, oh, okay. It's like 75 yards away from us.
Trust these young eyes, huh?
And so he got up and he shot. Well, he missed. But all of a sudden, the elk woods just exploded. We had probably 70, 80 elk running past us at this point in time.
Wow.
And it was game over from there. So
yeah, there's something about being in the woods or in the backcountry or whatever you want to call it, the outdoors. And that time of year is just majestic to me, to hear those bugles and all that sort of stuff and to be around that. And I guess my first hunting experience was I didn't grow up with a dad, but similar type thing. I wasn't as on to the glassing as you were. I was just along for the ride. And these guys are pretty proficient bow hunters. I mean, they have been for a long time. I was out with my uncles.
yeah.
And thank God for them, man, because I fell into it. They're the guys that bought me my first bow, so I have so much to be grateful for, to have, two men like that to kind of show me around. My grandfather as well. He wasn't much of a bow hunter, although I think he did bow hunt a little bit. I need to dive into it more with him. He's still alive, which is super awesome. So it was just like we were a tight-knit family, but September was always that time of year where they were out hunting, and they were gracious enough to take me along as a kid.
Yeah.
And man, what an eye-opening experience to be out. And it's so cool as a kid too. Like I guess I was always intrigued by military stuff, even as a kid, growing up watching Rambo and all this sort of stuff. So like to paint your face and be in the middle of the woods, and then these guys were so fucking awesome at calling and stuff. I remember bulls coming in and raking 10 yards from us and getting
just
piss on
going,
you,
oh.
from them peeing on their belly and stuff like that. And just like, that is a scary thing, especially from, however old I was, 8, whatever. And they were such elk fanatics that even if we weren't hunting like around here, if we saw elk, we'd stop and go mess with them a little bit, do a little bit of calling. I don't know if it's legal, but yeah, just get out there in the middle of them and have some fun. We weren't hunting, but just out there doing the same thing as if you were hunting,
Yeah.
And it was a little bit different here. There wasn't as many properties or fences, and like everybody kind of knew each other. So we had permission to go on to a lot of like private spots and stuff like that. Nobody really turned out. We were just having fun,
Right. Well, and that's like my grandparents had that cabin up in Evergreen. Well, back behind there was like 150 acres. Well, we never saw anyone back on there, and we'd always just go on there. We eventually got kicked off of that property just because someone else had bought it. And it's just not the same.
Right. Yeah, no, it's changed a lot. And just the frequency of hunters that I see now too. And trying to draw a tag. I've been trying to draw for a certain area I used to get it every other year, and now I think I'm like 6 years in, still haven't drawn a tag that I used to hunt all the time. My buddy Mark Montoya that I've had on, same sort of thing with him. He grew up here, kind of down south, around the Telluride area, somewhere down there. And he's like, I draw a tag once every 10 years now. And it used to be, we used to draw
Same
every
thing.
year. Yeah. I mean, to the point where his dad and his brothers go out. So it's a family thing. And he's like, I don't know if my dad can go on another hunt. It's kind of disheartening, being here for this long and then seeing that. And I understand that, there's a management side to it and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, just the frequency, it's just not the same.
Yeah.
And I think it's, at the same time, I also think that it's valuable to everybody because I know what it does for me and how it makes me feel. But diving a little bit more into your background, do you remember the first time that like you actually saw a big game animal go down and like the whole process of field dressing it and like
So
was that a shock to you, or were you just like all in? Because that was a shock to me, dude. I was like, what the fuck just happened? Like, this is insane, dude.
See, and I was all in.
Yeah.
I was that guy who, well, I ended up playing football in high school, so all my hunting went away. And then when I hit 18, I went out antelope hunting, and it was just an instant shot an animal, got in there, gutted it out, skinned it, got it in the cooler, and go. So, and then ever since then, it's been the same thing. So
yeah, I was a little bit younger, so I think that maybe, 10 years younger or something the first time I saw that, and to like, be handed a heart, something like that in the process,
Yeah.
And I'm so, like I said, I'm so fortunate with the guys that taught me, because they are literally like this storybook hunter that I aspire to be, because these guys are so good. I mean, they have some, my one uncle that lives here in the area still has got a Pope and Young buck, and it's just like, no, we're taking every bit of meat, like rib meat, neck meat. It's all going.
Right.
Like as much as you can, right? And I think that that's an important part. And it's actually part, I think you legally have to take a certain amount of meat, right?
So
like,
it's legally all 4 quarters, the back straps, and the tenderloins that you legally have to take. And
if you leave any of that behind, there's a fine
it's wanton
or
waste. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they fine you for it.
That's how it should be too, man. I think that
you're taking a resource from the land. At least take as much as you can. And I mean, they don't consider neck meat and stuff like that, but you're leaving a lot there if you don't take the rest of the neck.
Yeah.
So,
and it, there's different ways too. People always say it's tough or whatever, but there's, with all these chefs that we've had on and stuff, and like, there's so much information out there that's in the palm of your hand. Like we have a Traeger, and they have game recipes on the Traeger app. You don't even have to own a Traeger grill, and you can
don't even have to be that good of a chef. Ground that stuff up into burger and have some hamburgers.
Yeah.
Like, even if it's tough, once you grind it, it's going to be perfect eating.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I don't know. I hold a huge value on that, but I think a lot of that was how I was raised, and I think for me, and I've said this multiple times, I don't think that there was any better way. Like, I grew up on the most violent movies you could watch as a kid, right? Like, It was acceptable at the time when I grew up in the 80s. It was okay for your kid that was 8, 9 years old to watch, a rated R movie where guys were killing each other, and you had your movies like First Blood and all the
Terminator.
Terminator, all that sort of stuff, right? So I was always kind of infatuated with like military and all that sort of stuff, like I said. So like to get all camoed up and then go out there. But the first time that, I might have been desensitized to it from a Hollywood standpoint, but like the first time seeing that much blood in one spot and an animal actually expire in front of you, and then the whole process you get into, the smells, the everything of processing that animal, and then to the point where we were back far enough that we're boning this thing out, so not even quartering it, right? Like,
right, we're trying to make it as light as possible.
It's a butchering process out there, right?
Yeah.
And to see all that go down, and then to still be able to put it down on a plate and enjoy it, I at least made that connection, where I think some people get disconnected, as like they get grossed out or whatever, and then you can't eat it, like, because that's mentally in there. But seeing it firsthand, I don't think that you ever really do, right? It makes you kind of appreciate it.
Right. Definitely tastes better once you work hard for it too.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I think about that all the time, and I don't let my family waste it, right? Like we at least feed it to the dog, like if there's some scraps left, right? Or any sinew, like even the sinew, like, because a lot of times in September, especially if I'm doing it myself, I don't take the time to cut a lot of that sinew off and stuff. We just are making sure it's clean, packaging it, putting it in the freezer, and then I'll let it thaw and then kind of trim it off. Yeah. But I'll turn around and cook that for the dog, like I don't even let any of that go to waste.
Right.
Like somebody's going to eat it, right?
Yeah.
So just because I hold a value to that animal so much, and I think it's a way to honor them. But I think that like seeing that as a kid for the first time was eye-opening, Like it was a shock value to me. Like the emotions that I went through, how scared I was, how grossed out I was, how much I felt connected, and just that entire process, it made me a better person because, and maybe I'm getting too spiritual here, but I don't care. This is my podcast. So, but it made me more connected to putting a value on a life and to be more compassionate about life in general, I think.
Well, and it's that understanding of where everything came from and being grateful for what's on your table.
Yeah.
So,
and back when we were doing that, I mean, growing up with a single mom and stuff, that was a huge thing. I mean, that's what made me continue to hunt. Like, we might have been just on government cheese and milk if we didn't have elk steak or deer steak, you know?
yeah. Well, and we haven't bought ground beef in 4 years.
Why would you?
Like,
right?
the amount of meat that we can get and continue to hold to ourselves and eat, and it's much cleaner meat. So
It's way cleaner. Like, I cannot bring myself to go to the grocery store and buy the styrofoam. I mean, we do have to occasionally, right? Like,
yeah.
but even then, I'm so picky when it comes to it, you know? Like, I am spending that extra money to get
The Angus
a
or something
better,
like that.
yeah, better quality. But even that, man, it's just, you don't know what it's been through. Like, I was driving down 285 this last week, and I was just blowing by these stock trailers, and the entire stretch of 285, you know, from basically Turkey Creek, like down to C470 was full of stock trailers.
Yeah.
And I know exactly where they were going.
Right.
And it just smelt horrid. And I'm just thinking, like, oh my God. And then if you've ever seen the whole entire processing deal, is what's really made me a hunter, honestly. And like, I would much rather have everything that I've touched clean the way I wanted clean. Like, I even have a hard time taking my animals to a game processor. Like, I go to certain ones, but still it's not the same. Like, I just don't feel the same. I don't know that they're cleaning the burger,
the way
grinder.
you need it cleaned, or how often they're cleaning their tools or taking care of things. And there are definitely good processors out there, and you definitely want to make sure before you take it to a processor. But I'm the same way. I've ground up majority of my animals. I think I've done one time where I had it processed because I didn't have time. And I just wasn't happy with the turnout either. Yeah. Like, I don't think they took as much care as I did.
Yeah, there's particular times, like hair is one thing that drives me insane.
Yeah.
Right. And I take my animals down super clean, like not a hair on a quarter or anything. Right. And that's the wild thing too. Like, a couple times, it's just the whole process. Like, you pull in with your truck and there's guys in line because it's hunting season.
Yeah.
And some of the guys that just do not care, man, it drives me a little bit insane on that level. It's like literally just thrown in the back of a truck
and going,
hair on, everything. Like, not even
skinning it out. I've heard stories of people not even gutting their animals before they bring it there. Really? And it's like, how long has that thing been sitting in the back of your truck, driving from wherever you drove from to get it here with guts inside of it?
I think that there's an ethic in that too, right? Like, I think there's something to that, and it's definitely going to taint the meat. You know, the longer you let it sit like that is not good, right? Like,
right.
You need to get after it, whether it's the middle of the night, early in the morning,
whenever that is. That should be your first priority, is just taking care of that meat.
Yeah.
So.
No, and I think that's the way to honor the animal too. And it's crazy because, like, a couple of the places where I've taken my animals, and typically I only do this when it's like super warm, right? Because I'm concerned about the meat spoiling, right? That's important to me. When I drop my stuff off, the guys are like, "Thank you so much." They're like thanking me that I took the time to quarter it and clean it and
make sure it looked good.
Yeah, make sure it looked great. And I just wonder how often they see stuff
just
that's
nasty.
not. Yeah.
Like, oh. Well, and then you got to worry about if they mix in anything with yours. It's like,
well, that's just it. Like, are you just making all the burger together? So am I getting somebody else's deer that's mixed with my deer? And maybe, you know,
they didn't take that level of care.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's important to me too, so I would suggest, you know, vetting any of those spots you're going to take it. And it's sad because a lot of those, there used to be some smaller businesses up here that if you knew them, they were like local butchers. They would process your stuff for you. You could take your stuff in there and just have it ground or whatever you wanted to have done, right? And
Right.
all those guys have gone away. It's turned much more into an industrial thing because they've been kind of run out by these
Bigger
art galleries or whatever else is, you
Yeah.
know, like I remember growing up here, you know, like there's not any of those businesses around anymore. And they wouldn't be well received in the community either because
It's
of
a different
politics,
community. It's a
right?
different community up here.
Yeah.
So
No, it's wild. But yeah, man. So growing up here and seeing the influx in people and all that sort of stuff, I like to ask locals this a lot. And I think that this applies to much more than just Colorado. It could be any mountain region, whether you're living in the freaking Alps or shit, you could be living in the middle of Texas. Like, what are some of the common things that you've noticed that people could be doing better from a standpoint of just like treating these public spaces with respect and not trashing them to we've had you know, all kinds of different stuff come up, but
Well,
what's something that really gets in your
Hanging
skin?
Lake is a great example of that, where people were defacing rocks and actually poisoning that pool of water, where it destroyed that landscape to where they shut it down at one point in time even, or they were busing people in where you could just used to be able to just go park in the parking lot and hike up there.
So was it all the love letters or something on the rocks?
All the love letters on the rocks that they had to clean up. And that pool of water, it's actually pretty self-sustained. But when you start introducing outside influences in, like people were actually
Paint
getting
pens
in
and
the
stuff.
pool and leaving trash there, and it just destroyed that ecosystem to the point where it was so fragile that they couldn't let people up there, that they were worried about that side of things.
Really? So is it shut down now, or do you know what
I don't know if they've opened it back up yet or not. But
yeah, I don't know. It's been years since I've been up there, and it's like I find myself now being a native, and I hate using that term, and we bring it up all the time, but growing up in Colorado and going to all those spots as a kid, it's like I just avoid them now,
yeah,
which is sad, right? Because I want my kids to experience the same thing, but they're not, right?
right.
Because of that very, like maybe there's a waiting system. Some of these spots, like outside of Aspen, I forget what the hot springs is up there. You have to have a permit to go up there now,
which is insane.
Is crazy. But I get why they're doing it at the same time. I mean, the population has tripled here in the last like 10 years, I think, or something. It's insane.
Well, and I've had some fishing spots that I've gone to for 20, 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
And the last time we went, we took out an entire King Soopers bag of trash. And it's like, what are you people doing? Like, why are you leaving your trash here? So that really irritates me on a personal level. Cause
No, it does me too.
I grew up of, if you bring that sucker in, you better be bringing it back out.
Yeah, and I don't think that people are intentionally, to me, I think most people, let's say the vast majority, 75% of them actually respect the outdoors, right? They're not throwing hatchets into trees and doing all the shit that you do while
Crazy
you're
things.
camping, right? Yeah. And they're out there to enjoy nature and they're trying to be respectful of it. But I think that it goes a little bit like a step further. So, you know, bring something that will contain your trash better than a trash bag, right? Because we all know how easy it is to rip a trash bag and how many animals you're out there in their territory. And if they can get an easy meal, whether it's a squirrel, a bird,
Chipmunk.
a bear, right?
Yeah.
They're going to drag that shit down the hill. They're probably going to go to a water source at some point. So it's probably going to end up in the water. And then who knows where it ends up.
Right.
Or the wind starts to blow it around, you know? So I think it's just being prepared. Like, you know, it just take that extra step.
Right.
Buy a trash can with a locking lid or something. Put it in the back of your truck, you know? Like, I think the more
Rubbermaid tote.
Rubbermaid tote. There you go. Yeah. Or, you know, you can even go as far as hanging it. But if it's in a plastic bag, it's going to do no good.
No.
You know, like you got to have something to secure it a little bit better than that. So,
Right.
so I think that those little steps like that of stuff that people can do and just thinking ahead to the bigger picture, right? Like
Right.
there's no way that a thin piece of plastic is going to protect your trash. And then it goes a step further, like, using toilet paper in the back. I can't tell you how many times I've been so far back and I find a pile of human crap with toilet paper piled on top of it. It's like,
bury it. Something. Come on.
Yeah. You missed the memo about how to do this, right? So I think it's just educating yourself on how to properly do stuff. Because I think a lot of people just go out there and it's just lack of education, or like I was always taught those ethics, right? Like from a young age, like I said, I was fortunate to have those like father figures and people that cared enough about this space and this, the land around us. And like I said, no matter where you're at, all these rules apply, whether you're in a city park or not, right?
Right.
Like, you're not going to go take a dump in the city park. Well, maybe unless you're in San Francisco.
Oh. Sounds miserable.
Yeah. And just leave it there. You know what I mean? Like,
at least do it in the middle of the woods.
Yeah, exactly.
Do something
it should be
to take care of it.
The same. Yeah. Yeah. And there's not trash cans everywhere out there either. So be prepared to take your own shit out,
Right.
If you have to.
Well, even just your wrappers.
Yeah.
Like as simple as putting it back in the bag.
Yeah. I brought this up with Mark our last couple podcasts ago, and he brought up a really good point. He was just talking about as a kid growing up here and driving up I-70, it used to be evergreens, right? Or pines and stuff. And I never really noticed it until I was driving down the hill, and I had to drive down every day this week to take my daughter to a ballet camp. So I'm just as guilty as anybody. The amount of dead trees just from car exhaust, right? And like emissions and that sort of thing is crazy. And the air quality that we see here, we're always in a red flag warning down the hill, it's insane. So, he brought up kind of a crazy notion that probably wouldn't work, but I could see where he was going with it. He was like, just turn I-70 into a toll road. Everybody has to pay a toll. But like, if you're not actually going to go out and do something and connect with nature, like was his point, was like, there's no point in just driving just to drive, to go see the mountains, right? Like, and I know I could get it if you're disabled or handicapped or whatever and you can't get out. Like, yes, go out and experience it however you can, but just, try to be conscious of that a little bit too. And that I feel like that was an eye-opener to me, and he said it on here firsthand that, like, think about before you're making your Costco runs or whatever, do I really need this shit or whatever? And I know that that's big picture type stuff, but I think that we're having a much bigger impact on the environment just from that standpoint than the Dorito bag floating down the river.
Yeah.
I think it's way worse.
Right.
But it's something that I thought was kind of cool. It's kind of off the grid from what people normally say. People normally say trash, and that's a great point too. Like, I don't know how many times I've been, especially as a photographer, been in this pristine aspen grove, and I'm trying to capture nature for what it is my whole premise with Earth Iron Society is like earth. Then there's iron, which I think is super cool, that is kind of molded what we have evolved as a population or a species or whatever, right? That's how we started waging wars and all that sort of stuff. And like some of my world travels, being able to see blacksmith work, I'm super intrigued by, and like how artistic it is and what kind of influence those guys had on war and all that sort of stuff. And then society, right? So you have like what we've become, but like to try to capture in that earth category. So no human influence, no power lines. Like if you look at that photo behind you, there's not any human influence that you can pick out, right? That's just a mountain with trees.
Yeah.
Right. That's the logo for the podcast. But I'll be damned if I have a perfect aspen shot of an entire aspen grove where there's not Sam Loves Lucy carved into the fucking side of it,
right into
or
it.
Fuck you, or whatever like, who is angry enough in the middle of an aspen grove
to write
carve
something
fuck
that
into
bad?
the middle of a tree?
Come on.
Like, and I don't know how many times I've come and I've paid more attention to it. Like, that's been an eye opener for me, trying to shoot in those realms and trying to capture just nature It's near
seeing
impossible.
something-
It's like if you look at the photos that I have comparative that I would actually, put out for publication, it's few and far between. The only place you really get is the backcountry.
Right. And you've got to get back up in there.
No airplane streaks. It's fucking almost impossible, man. And it's made me appreciate that a little bit more, like take in the moment, connect with nature a little bit more, being able to see something like, I kind of think about it like, as Lewis and Clark were coming across the U.S.
Yeah.
And the first time, could you imagine them stepping into like Glacier or something, or the first time they saw a grizzly bear or something? Like, what in the fuck?
Right.
Like, how fast do I have to run to get away from this, or...
Right. Well, and even as they were crossing, there was elk across the plains. Like, could you imagine just watching hundreds of elk crossing around on the plains?
Have you ever seen any of those big herds in Colorado, like in South Park sometimes in the winter, like where it's like 5,000 head or something?
Like all you see is a sea of elk.
That's insane.
It's great, though.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Well, and it goes back to even like we were talking earlier about the moose. You're seeing a lot more moose. You're seeing a lot more stuff like that. So I think we are doing a good job, but we could definitely do a lot better.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, and like us growing up as kids, because how old are you, Scott?
I'm 33.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm in my 40s. I got 10 years on you. But as a kid growing up here, there were no moose.
No.
There might have been one or two stragglers. So that is something where, just like we were talking about, letting biologists manage that population and reintroduce animals that should be here. And this is a great habitat for a moose, right? Anywhere in Colorado. And look what they've done with it,
Yeah, and there hasn't been a hunting trip in the last 4 or 5 years that I've went on that I haven't seen a moose.
Yeah, me included.
So,
which
is
if you're
fantastic.
in elk country, you're going to run into moose now.
Yeah.
Super cool. Hopefully it's not a big bull. Actually, last year, last hunting season, my brother and I went in. We were going to an open area, and we were trying to get in. I think we were there 1 or 2 days before, and I guess I'm used to seeing moose now, but not forever in Colorado, right? And I've been hunting for a long ass time. But we went in, we're driving the road, and we're watching for elk tracks on this. It's a 4-wheel drive trail, right? Yeah. And just watching, trying to figure out where elk are moving and stuff like that, going into our camp. And we come up on this mud puddle, and it is just covered in blood. And there's hunters up there, and I'm like, I just instantly, my red meter went like through the roof. I was like, somebody poached an elk, dude, because there was elk tracks in that same mud puddle. And I'm like, somebody just poached an elk in here. They had to have, right? This is August 29th. There hasn't been any hunting until September 1st, right? Like, and we're 2 days early. And we went around the corner and ended up talking to another guy. Like, did you see any hunters? I was about ready to call one of the game wardens that I knew, like, hey, dude, somebody poached an elk up here. And he's like, no, it was a big bull moose that was shedding out of his velvet.
Yeah.
And it just looked like a bloodbath.
Well, and they're such massive creatures. Yeah. Like, I've had times where I'm 18 yards away and just watched them walk through the forest like it was nothing, and then walked over to where they were walking, and it's chest-high deadfall throughout there. And it's like, they are just massive
and
creatures.
They don't even get as big here as they do like up in Alaska or
Canada,
man. Some of those moose up there are huge. I really think that that's the Sasquatch sightings. Because there's been times where, like, I've been in the trees, and even my dog whimpered, and she's not scared of much, She was scared shitless because you just see this black thing moving through the trees, and you can't really make it out.
And they're so quiet.
Yeah.
They're quiet.
Such a big animal. It's wild. Well, even, like, the foam target that we were shooting today.
Yeah.
Like, the thoracic cavity of a moose is
huge.
Half this table.
Yeah.
Almost, It's wild.
But
but I'm glad to have him back. I wonder, have you been putting in for a moose tag at all? Or
yes, I have.
I haven't yet. What's the drop? Do you know what the draw process is on that and how long it takes? And
so with moose, goat and sheep, it's 3 years that you have to put in that you're actually not in the draw. But then after those 3 years, you actually get put into where you can get that tag awarded to you.
Okay.
So, and it's not a preference point style like elk and deer are. So you're actually in the drawing once you get those 3 years in.
So it's a true lottery system at that
Right.
point.
Well, it is a little weighted with how many points you have in, but yes, you still have a chance after those 3 years.
That's kind of cool. Man, Colorado's got it dialed when it comes to all that sort of stuff. They're pretty on top of it, I think.
But you also talked about that point creep side of things where
Right.
times where it might take 1 or 2 years, now it's taking 5, 6, 7 years.
Well, and I think that's managing the populations though, right?
Right.
There's so many hunters. Think about how popular hunting has got with, even just in the last 5 to 6 years, I've seen a drastic increase. And this is no knock on any of these guys, but like, you have all these amazing hunters that are sharing
Information.
I mean, somebody might be inspired to go hunt by listening to this podcast.
Well, and
out
you've
of our
got a lot of
listeners, you know?
adult onset hunters now.
Yeah.
Which is great and fantastic, and a lot of people being aware of where their meat and their food is actually coming from and getting involved in it from that aspect.
Right.
Which still is a fantastic thing because that's what's going to keep the sport alive.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that's just because of the influx that we're seeing. I think that's why it's longer to get into these
Seasons.
spaces. And, you know, a lot of their habitat's changing too. I mean, we have way less water here than we ever had, right? So that drastically changes stuff. I would imagine that affects elk populations, especially in certain areas. Like the particular area that I put in for, one reason why I've been putting in there is there's not a lot of water sources. So
you go,
what animals are
there?
Go. You're right. Yeah. So I don't know. It's a double-edged sword, you know?
Right.
Yeah. But I think that they're doing a pretty decent job with it. I would say the one criticism that I have, if I was going to give them any, is more education on how to be an ethical, like, proper hunter. And I know that your kid just went through the hunter safety course, right?
Yeah.
Was there anything in there like that was kind of like ethical?
And I really wish that they do a lot of the rules and regulations, and I just don't think that they have the time side of things to really go over ethics. And I've read quite a few books like the Sand County Almanac, which is a great book.
I'm not familiar with that.
You need to read it.
Okay.
So it's all about the ethics side of things of hunting and conservation. So
I'm definitely going to put that on my list then.
Yeah, and it goes into that side of things of why we need to be conservationists along with hunting and really focus on animal populations, environment, and taking care of the world that we live in. So,
yeah, no, that's super important.
But I think they could introduce that into the hunter safety side of things.
I think that they should.
Right.
I mean, as simple as like how to take a crap in the woods or clean up your trash. Like it would be add a question to the test.
Right.
And, I think the
Even
firearm
just a section.
safety, yeah, something like that. And I almost I fucking hate this. And I'm going to get criticized for saying this, but I almost feel like, a lot of these people that are mistreating public lands, not all of them are the hunting population is so small. I think the bigger thing lies in people that are recreating. So I almost feel like as you had to take a hunter safety course once in your lifetime, you should have to take some sort of backpacking course because that's going to cut down on search and rescue. It's going to cut down on, but then we're turning into now you got to have a permit to go camp. Well, is that right?
Even if we start teaching it in schools, get
There
it
you
into
go.
the middle school or high school, we're actually teaching something about conservation and into our science classes. Like, why aren't we teaching this that can actually be applied? Whereas I don't want to knock it. We're teaching kids about cells, which, let's be real, how often are they going to use something about cells? Whereas if we teach them about the environment and taking care of our side of things, they're actually going to apply that and use
at a
that.
local level where it happens, right? Like
Right.
not just on emissions and greenhouse gases and that I think that all that stuff is important, but that's the only thing that they really cover, right?
Right.
They don't cover how you impact the environment firsthand just by crawling out of a riverbank.
Right.
That's a huge thing. Like go look at Deckers right now, man. It's
getting washed
nothing
out
like it used to be.
Yeah.
It's insane. And just, the frequency and respecting wildlife. And, people have talked about and brought up too, like just, you're in the backcountry and somebody's blaring, Leonard Skinner or whatever.
Right.
Having
the
a good
noise
time.
pollution side of things.
The noise pollution side of stuff. So, no, it's all really good stuff. So we're burning through the time here, man. We're going to wrap this thing up here pretty quick. But real quick, before we jump off, if somebody wanted to come shoot a American Bowman, what's the best way to figure that out? Or maybe they're getting into archery. I know you guys sometimes have some shoots where there's some coaching involved. I know there's some youth stuff that happens up there.
Yep. So every year we do a youth shoot. So we love to have the kids up there. It's a free event for kids. So
that's cool.
We're providing bows. We're providing arrows. We actually have Colorado Parks and Wildlife out there with us.
Oh, really?
And helping us with that side of things. So we're teaching kids how to shoot, having a good time, and showing them what archery is about. And then as far as people coming in, general public side of things, the shoots are a great way to get in. And we actually have another really, really cool shoot coming up on August 13th. August 13th, which actually wasn't on our website because we scheduled it a little later on in the year after we had already released our schedule.
Okay.
And it's actually with Pack 'em Out apparel called the Western Hunt Fest. So,
that's cool. Is that is it a competition or is it?
So they are
some
doing
of that
a
is
competition.
like packing animals out, right? And
if you actually go to packemoutapparel.com is where we can see that side of things, and it's EM. So pack EM out apparel.com. Yeah, right there.
Thank you, Gabby.
So these guys, Jeff and Efren, run Pack 'em Out Apparel. They're actually two boys out of Colorado Springs that started their own apparel company. And they're doing a thing called Western Hunt Fest. If you hit shop, and then it should be down there, right there, Western Hunt Fest registration. So they're actually doing a shooting competition where they're going to have compound guys competing against compound guys, traditional guys competing against traditional guys. They're having an elk calling competition, and then they're going to have a pack out competition.
Really?
So they're going to do a simulated
team pack out competition.
So they have a team pack out, and then they have a solo pack out.
Oh, nice.
So
that's what the belt's for, huh?
Yeah. So they're actually going to do a simulated elk in sandbags, and people have to bring their own packs and try and see who can pack an elk out quicker.
Really?
Yeah. So pretty
you guys
cool
got
deal
EMS
there too.
standing by?
I don't know. I'm going to have the ATV. We're just going to grab them and pick them up. So
man, that's awesome though. That's super cool.
Yeah. And then they've actually got quite a few different vendors that are coming out and sponsors, and
when
really
is that
should
happening?
be a great event. That is going to be August 13th.
Awesome.
So,
and if anybody wanted any of this information, I know it's not updated on your website, but you guys also have an Instagram page because I've been featured on it.
Yeah, that you have, which is American Bowmen Club. So, and that's actually ran by my wife. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And your role there is you are the president of the club? Yep. Okay. Perfect.
So.
Super.
There's actually the wife.
If somebody wanted to contact you guys, what's the best way? Is there an email or
so
like
you
that?
can email us through the website. There is a contact us on there. You can also hit up the Instagram, which again my wife does run. Any questions?
I think that's actually how we connected, wasn't it?
Yep.
Or something. Okay.
So, and any questions she can't answer, she automatically reverts to me. So I end up answering some questions, very few and far between. But yeah, we definitely even with the contact us, those emails go straight to me. So.
Super cool. Well, Scott, man, I had a blast with you this morning, man. Dude, I think shooting is more fun than podcasting, but this has been awesome too, man. I really enjoyed just sitting down with you for a minute. Like, we haven't had a chance to do this, or just sit down and have a conversation.
Uninterrupted. We're too busy shooting.
Yeah. Too busy focusing. It's like I lose my train of thought. You'll ask me a question, and then,
we'll shoot, it's like, I got to shoot. What were we talking about?
Yeah, that's that whole, shutting off the mind for a minute. So, no, super cool, man. I can't wait to go shoot with you again. So, we're going to make it happen. We'll get the kids back out there on the course.
Back out and go.
Super. We'll do that for sure the next time we go out. And, dude, thanks for your time.
Absolutely.
Thanks for inviting me up there.
No, thank you for having me on
It's like
here.
one of the best things that's happened to me this year. It is the best thing that's probably happened to me this year, is being a member up at American Bowmen, and I'm getting my reps in up there. So, super awesome.
Fantastic.
I don't have to drag my own 3D target to the middle of the national forest and worry about hikers or anything.
Yeah. Well, and that's the nice thing about being private, is it is just us out there.
Exactly. So. And it's all a common interest. Everybody there is super cool. I think the night that I was there and got inducted, or
voted in.
Yeah, voted in. Okay, there you go. Inducted sounds a little bit entitled, but I'm going to make it sound that way. No, I think that there was maybe like 8 or 10 new members, and just common, like, it's a little community. It was awesome. I was down at Rocky Mountain because I've ruined so many arrows up there, buying some more arrows, and I ran into another guy that was a member, new member and stuff. So it's cool. It's just a little community, and it's part of that archery community. You guys are very welcoming group of guys, and I'm super happy to be a part of it. So thank you.
I'm stoked about
Thanks to everybody that puts in all the effort at American Bowmen as well to make that place what it is. Yeah. And I appreciate all you guys out there at the work parties and cutting down trees or cleaning up slash and just making that place freaking awesome. Thanks, man. I've enjoyed this too. We'll do it again.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks everybody for listening. Thanks for listening to the Mountainside Podcast. If you haven't had a chance to do this already, please take a moment, follow, like, subscribe, or rate on whatever platform you catch the Mountainside Podcast at. Also, if you'd like some more information on upcoming episodes, safety tips, access to all of our affiliates, and all the badass discounts that we get here at the Mountainside Podcast, check out themountainsidepodcast.com.